I want to complete and be clean around it, and I want to make a new agreement that I'm not going to be part of this. That might be the answer, as opposed to worrying about what people think about me, coming from fear, and saying half-heartedly commit to something that you know you're not going to be able to honor. So clean it up. And Steve goes, all right, well, let's go back to scratch. Can we agree that if you make an agreement with me, so it doesn't matter if you're not your word anywhere else, but in this relationship, can you be your word? And I went, yes, I can commit to that. That I can commit to. And he goes, great, we'll start there, and then we'll build the muscle. So when we call this a mountain without a top, we can also say this is a muscle that we're growing. And it's an unlimited muscle. It can get bigger than you can ever possibly imagine. So over time, I learn about being my word. I called it creating agreements with Steve. Then I learn about integrity through the work of Werner Erhard and Michael Jensen, and that simply means integrity, the way they use it, is simply the integration of your word and your action. There's no right or wrong. It's just, if you say something, do you do it? If you do it, then it's an integrity. If you don't do it, it's not an integrity. And there's no judgment on it. It's just, is it integral? It's the same etymology. Is integrated? Does it align? You say this, you do that, oh, it's integrated. That's integrity. There's integrity there. You say this, you don't do that, oh, it's not. It's like, I think and I'm not an engineer, but if a part has integrity, that means it holds together, I think in an engineering context. So it's the same thing. It's not right or wrong, it's not good or bad, it's not about judgment, it's seeing the relationship there. So when I start working with Hardison, I'm thinking, I got pretty good integrity. I've been coached by Chandler, I've been teaching it. And we spent 2 sessions talking about me being my word. And I realized, oh, my integrity or me being my word is actually quite a lot lower than I thought. And he says he finds this with like a lot of his clients and people who are really, really, really successful. So I wanted to raise this. We talked about this the last weekend. And I want to raise this because 1, what I've observed in the school, and 2, this is a topic that is going to come up with your clients. And it really ties in with what we spoke about this morning around being willing to let go of people liking you, because I've noticed in the past, I wouldn't bring up this topic because I was afraid I was going to upset a client. It felt edgy. What it looked like to me was like, call someone out on being their word. I was like, oh, I can't do that. But also, it was like, I wasn't being my word. So Steve's really helped me to see that it's not a judgment thing. This is not something to like berate myself over, but it's an opportunity like, oh, if I can grow this muscle, hey, I can create more in the world. I create more income, more impact, a better relationship, a better body, whatever I want. It's totally related to being my word. In this school, we've made a bunch of agreements. And again, I'm going to remind you, don't hear this as criticism. Remember I said that? Right. So we've made a bunch of agreements. The first weekend, the second weekend, even this weekend. Now, one of the things that Steve Hardison talked to me about is he goes, if I make a lunch date, so Hardison's saying this, he goes, if I make a lunch date with Steve Chandler and I say, hey, in 3 months' time at 1 o'clock, let's meet at this restaurant for lunch. He goes, I do not need to communicate with him in between that time. And he goes, we might, but he goes, if I say today, let's meet on March, what is it like? Say June the 23rd at 2 p.m. at this restaurant. He goes, between now and June the 23rd at 2 p.m., I don't need to have a conversation with the guy. Because of who Steve is, he is his word. And he gave me some other examples of clients of his. He goes, I have a relationship with them that if I say something and we agree it's like, I don't need to check in, I don't need to chase up, it's just done. And when he said that, I was like, yeah, that's really true about Chandler. That's what I've experienced of him. It's also really true of what I've experienced about Hardison. Now, does that mean he doesn't make new agreements with me sometimes? Yeah. So we've had days where we've had coaching sessions set up, and then he said, hey, Kush, could you swap that around? Because I've got someone else who wants to move it. Would that work for you? And I can say yes or no. So I can create a new agreement with him, or he can create a new agreement with me or not. That's still him being his word because he's checking in. But he won't turn around and say, hey, I can't meet you that day. If he agrees to do something, he's doing it. The first time I met Hardison, he had agreed to speak at Rich Litvin and Steve Chandler's event that they were doing in London in 2014. And Hardison was ill. Like he had a cold or whatever. And most people would have stayed in bed. He didn't, because he was his word. And there were like 100 people who had, some of them flown to the UK to hear him. So he came because he is his word. And I've learned a lot from that. And shown myself what I can create when I'm my word. Now, one of the things I've observed in the school is, and maybe some of you have noticed this, there's been a lot of frantic activity over the last 2 weeks. And I just had a thought, and I've spoken to some of you about this. And you can just do like your own reflection. This is not a criticism, it's just a reflection. If I hadn't said anything on Facebook, like I think 2-3 weeks ago, I started going, hey, reminder everyone. If I hadn't said that, and we came to this school today, and I just asked people, okay, hey, everybody who has watched, everyone stand up, okay? You have to do this. Imagine I said this, and I said, right, sit down if you haven't watched all the laser sessions. Just answer in your head, how many people do you think would sit down? Just think about it. Come up with a number, right? You don't need to tell me, right? Just come up with a number. So you think, okay, this is a number of people would sit down. Then I say, right, the ones who are standing, sit down if you haven't read all the books. Now deduct another whatever from that. I'm not telling you, just do this yourself. Now if I said, all right, everyone who has, if you haven't watched all the masterclasses, sit down. And I think one of the things that we asked to graduate from the school, have you marked as done on Facebook and commented on all the mandatory content? By the way, Felipe and I checked what we'd requested. We went back in the lunch break and checked all this. So these are the 4 things that we've asked. Okay? How many people do you think would be remaining standing? This is not a criticism. It's like an exploration. I'm just curious, like, how many people do we think would still be standing at the end of that exercise? 3, 4, 5, 1, right? I don't know. We'll never know. But that's interesting, isn't it? Now let me add to that. All right, let's say we've got, I've heard people say 1 to 5. Any more numbers? Anyone think higher than 5?
Give us more power.
Half? Whatever? Who else?
10.
10? All right, okay. I don't know. So
This is in the context that you've not given us.
that's in the context. I've not said anything a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Do you want to revise your numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah? So this is not what's happening. I'm saying if I hadn't said anything. Okay? So now, we made some other agreements. So let's say however many are standing up. How many of you were in the room on time every single session? How many of you were a stand for other people to be in the room every single session? Because we made those agreements. It's not criticism. I'm not judging you. This is something for us to look at. Because if it's happening here, and this is what Steve's called me out on so many times, in a loving way, hey Kush, if you've got a blind spot here, chances are it's elsewhere in your life. And he's right. So, and I don't want to, this is a safe space. I'm not judging anyone, and I'm very mindful about how I want to cover this topic, but you want to ask this for yourself. Would I be standing up? And if I'm not standing up, I'm not criticizing you. I'm just saying, is there an opportunity there to say, could I change my system? Could I do anything differently? Could I be anything different so that I would be standing up? Now, this is what's interesting about being a word. It's not a straitjacket. It really isn't. This is really important to get. So if I've given my word to do something or be somewhere or get something done, and it looks like I can't do it, right? I've spoken to some of you about this. It's like, hey, I said I was going to do this, 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 and this, and I realized, oh, I totally underestimated that I can't do all of that, or something new's come along or whatever. How do I stay being my word? Make a new agreement. When do you make a new agreement? As soon as you know. I didn't say this on purpose because I wanted to cover it this weekend. What's really interesting to me is how little communication I had, and I have with some of you, but how little communication I've had with people in the school who I think knew they weren't going to get everything done. And it's not a criticism, and I'm not calling any particular person out. But it's something that I want people to see is like, hey, where else am I? Because I've done this. It's not criticism. Right, fingers crossed, I can get it all done. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Oh shit, last minute I can't get it done. And I tell someone at the last minute. Anyone else done that? Right, I've done that all the time. When could I have communicated? Like way earlier? Right? Who could have made a new agreement with me? Anyone in the school. It doesn't mean I'd say yes, but you could have communicated and I might have said yes. There's a power that you have. It's not a straitjacket. Because who else is not being their word? Everyone. So again, I think, do we talk in this school about normal versus, we talked about being normal before? No? All right, so this is something I've talked about with some of my clients. There's what's normal, and then there's what's possible. It's really, really, really normal to not be your word. It's incredible how normal it is. Well, what did you expect me to do? Right? There was traffic. Oh, what? There was traffic. Someone came from out of town. My mom's visiting. I forgot. I didn't realize. What happens when we go to that, what's very normal, those reasons for us not being our word? Our word doesn't mean anything to ourselves. Do you know who the biggest loser is when we're not our word? We. And it's corrosive to our self-esteem. Because we show ourselves that our word doesn't mean anything. Now, what I found is most people, or most coaches at least, they tend to be better at being their word with other people, but not so good at being their word to themselves. Who can relate to that? Right? Well, if I tell a client I'm going to be here on time, I'll be on time for that. But if I tell myself, oh, at 2:30 I'm going to go through my accounts, oh, that's fine. No, I didn't tell anyone else. No one will know. I'll put that off. I don't feel like it. But that's also a creation, and it's a muscle. So I had this conversation with a client recently. You know who you are. I said, when you're not your word, this is my suggestion. This is my 2-step strategy. Right? Step number 1, clean it up. So you might have created a mess in someone's world. Now they might go, it's fine, and it might be fine. Or they might say it's fine, and inside they're really pissed off. You've created a mess. So clean that up. Hey, what can I do to make this right? And that could be a bunch of things. How can I make this up to you? How can I make it right? Not from a place of berating yourself, but just cleaning it up. And when Steve taught me this, he goes, is there anything you need to clean up with me? And there was a couple. I said, yes, actually, Steve, 2 years ago, you asked me to do this, and I never did it. Can I clean that up? Great. What's a new agreement you want to make? I want to make an agreement I'm not going to do that. Done. Anything else? Yeah, there was an agreement that I was going to do this. I haven't done that. What new agreement do you want to take? No, I will do. Can you give me 2 extra weeks? Yes. It's clean. So clean up whatever you need to clean up. It could be, the cleanup could be, hey, I've committed to like a regular meetup or something. And the cleanup could be, hey, I committed to this. I realized I cannot commit to this ongoing. I really want to, and I've got so much on. So I would like to bow out of this agreement. Can we, because I think I'm just going to keep letting you down. And is there anything I need to make sure we complete correctly? Is this going to cause a problem for you? Are there any financial implications, whatever? I want to complete and be clean around it, and I want to make a new agreement that I'm not going to be part of this. That might be the answer, as opposed to worrying about what people think about me, coming from fear, and saying half-heartedly commit to something that you know you're not going to be able to honor. So clean it up. Right? Clean it up. The second thing is, that's not the only thing. One is cleaning it up. The second thing is, what can I learn from this? Don't spend any energy berating yourself. It's a waste of energy. Spend the energy going, oh, what can I learn? So like, great example from Felipe. I didn't realize I need to be back in the time when, what can I learn? Put a reminder on my phone. Maybe I need to start using Google Calendar. Nick's a big fan of Delenta, right? That's got a system built into it. Great, like, oh, maybe this is going to help me be my word in meeting clients or, getting stuff sent out. Someone recently said to me, hey, I forgot to send the link to a client and then they didn't show up. And I was like, right, what can we learn from this? Is there a system we can put in place so that becomes more seamless going forward? Felipe and I are constantly talking about how we can improve our systems in the school. And it might not, if we can do it for now, we do it for now. If not for now, right, for next year. What can we put in place for next year where we make things clearer or we learn from it or whatever to either be our word? Well, actually, it's all about being our word, because if our word is this is the best coaching school on the planet and we're always getting better, then if we're going to be in alignment with that, anything we can look to improve, we do that. But what I find is most coaches either don't clean things up, and the way they communicate it is like, hey, I can't do that. That's not creating, I can't do that. That's not a new agreement. That's unilaterally making a decision. New agreement is like, is there any chance, I know I agreed to meet you at 10, is there any chance we can move that to 11? That's very different than, hey, I can't meet you at 10 o'clock on Monday. It's two very different things.